You're watching Business Q&A with me, Gary Alfonso. Established in 1998, Gestalt helps companies deliver profitable business growth and shareholder value by applying bespoke B-BBEE strategies. And we can't talk B-BBEE without touching on the oftentimes controversial topic of business transformation in South Africa. Joining me now to shed more light on this issue is the CEO and co-founder of Gestalt, Deon Oberholzer. Deon, thanks very much for joining us. Very topical subject and one that many businesses in South Africa is looking at. But again, as we get into this, a multitude of codes, a multitude of applications, hard for the average person to keep up. What made you decide to go into this specific field?
Gary, thank you very much for the opportunity, and thank you for allowing me to talk about my business and also one of my favorite subjects, transformation in South Africa. So I'm personally very passionate about it. I think it's a critical part of our economical development. We need to integrate and make the country work for everybody. And the essence of what the codes and all the related legislation is about making that work by putting steps in place for that to happen. So our job as a company is to navigate that, to help people figure out strategies, how to find out which way will work best for them.
So obviously, much of what this B-BBEE entails sits within the Employment Equity Act. What is it? What is it that companies need to look out for that helps them, that you can help them navigate this?
Okay, so the Employment Equity Act got amended quite recently. It's still in process with the sectoral targets being out for public comment, and it changes the narrative in terms of the rules. So there are three very important things about it that we have to understand. The one is that they change the definition of what companies are applicable and has to comply. So you have what we call a designated employer, and they've changed that to be based on the turnover, not on the number of people that you have, not your revenue, etc., etc. So quite a large number of companies will now suddenly fall outside of that definition of a designated employer, which means that your smaller companies would be free to less legislation around them, but your larger companies would have to be more compliant. So that's a very important first step. The second step, which is really critical, is the fact that they've changed the compliance requirement. You now have to have a certificate that specifies that you are compliant, where before the Department of Labour would come to your company and say, we believe that you are not compliant, you need to do something about it. Now you need to submit your information, and then they decide whether you're compliant or not. That in itself brings a bit of a problem, because what if they don't like what you say? They can withhold your certificate, and by the legislation that have now been gazetted, then you can't do business with the government. So that's quite an important factor that we have to understand. There will be a big impact on business. And then the third one is this comes from and is aligned with the whole agenda around BEE. So the codes have been put in place to set a series of practices into the economy that says this is what you're supposed to do, and if you do it right, then you'll get recognition. The employment equity is a part of it, and they've basically taken it out of the codes and put it separate as legislation, effectively saying it's now time to meet the legislation. This is maybe more voluntary, this is no longer voluntary. And I think companies need to understand the impact that it'll have on them.
So this is still a process, and we're looking, are there risks, but maybe also opportunities, things that companies should be doing now?
I think that the most important thing that companies have to realize, this is it. Legislation is on the table, and you don't really have it, whether you agree with it or not, besides the point now. And if you don't put the right emphasis into skills development and recruitment of your future staff, you're going to have a problem. The legislation does give us a couple of years to comply. It's been around for a while. But I think it's a wake-up call for business to say, you know what, the time is now. We need to look at this. And where we have areas of deficiency in our management structure, we need to do something about it. And fortunately, the codes integrate with that by saying, if you do the right stuff on skills development, you'll get the right results on your employment equity, because you'll be able to promote the right people. And those things are critically important for businesses to synchronize, so they have a strategy that works.
How does this align with the view that perhaps this entire concept has been brought about by the need for smaller businesses to be more competitive, but also to be able to operate more freely and perhaps look at the way large organizations procure. So when it comes to the issue of preferential procurement, what do you think we can expect as an outcome in that regard?
So the preferential procurement is also up for grabs at the moment. There's been a court case recently that is probably one of the most hollow victories in the history of transformation in South Africa, where it was found that the qualification criteria wasn't compliant with the constitution, and government was sent back to the drawing board, and they went back to the drawing board, and they changed the narrative fundamentally, because what the narrative was before is that the economy consists of two groups of people: those that are black and need to be supported as best they can to integrate into the economy, find opportunities, etc., and those who are not black and what they need to do in order to also play along. What the changes in the procurement regulations as it stands now has done is ignored this part. So it's now about being black. And what has happened is gone back to the constitution, which very clearly says that we should act in a way that promote black people in the economy, etc., all the good stuff. But it's taken away the steps of what you should do if you're not black. So it's now created a sort of a more an exclusive type environment, and that's going to create chaos as we go down the line. What has happened is they came up with a new set of regulations, effectively allowing the government to do what they believe complies with or aligns with the constitution, and we have some haphazard sets of requirements in tenders. Going back to the age of tenderpreneurship and more the tender, probably a lot of fraud and a lot of all sorts of stuff going to happen, which I think is going to create some chaos for a while. We hope that the new Framework Act will come out. It's been with Cabinet, it's going to go on to Parliament, and then it's going to be followed by frameworks and all sorts of more legislation. We hope that in the end we will be somewhere where a company can say, okay, if I do these things, I'm compliant and I can take a step forward. What worries me is that we're now in a point of chaos between harbours, and I think it's going to be a problem for most companies to actually align with ever-changing requirements.
So this is seen as this replacement bill, and how can businesses prepare for that?
I think the important point is to look at where you do business. If you do business with government, you have a much bigger problem because they can now set their own tender rules based on certain broad frameworks. If you deal with private companies, it's very much the same way it was before. So if you depended on government business, you need to act, because otherwise the doors will close on you. And I'm assuming if I say you, I'm talking about white companies, and black-owned companies have got a fantastic free access right now. They should jump to the opportunity, and if they don't have what it takes, they should partner with other businesses in order to form joint ventures and form partnerships in order to tackle the economy.
Finally, I mean, South Africans are known to be creative. So what is your view in how do businesses then move forward in the face of this?
See, business can function in any environment where the rules are clear and stable. So it almost, and you'll see that if you look at the South African economy, we've muddled along with a huge unemployment rate, but companies have been able to survive. And then every time you change rules, there's this narrative of now what? Now, it's important that we stabilize the rule sets on the one side, but from business's perspective, it's important that you actually become agile, that you respond quickly, that if something happens that you don't understand, that you find out what it means, how does it impact your business, and then map out a strategy that you can follow through and actually not miss out on the opportunities that we do have.
We're going to have to leave it there, but Deon, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
That was Deon Oberholzer, founder and CEO of Gestalt Consult, helping businesses unravel the complexities of B-BBEE. You're watching Business Day TV. Stay tuned.